Welcome to Conversations with Barbara. I'm Barbara Kanellopoulos, and my guest today is Mary Petiet. She's a poet and novelist who writes about Cape Cod. Welcome to the program, Mary.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, let's talk a bit about your recent novel, Wash Ashore. It is, I must say, I enjoyed reading it. And I think that whether you're a Wash Ashore, a longtime resident, or someone totally unfamiliar with Cape Cod, you'll find it's an enjoyable read. Tell us something about your protagonist, Olive Adams.
Well, Olive is she's a character who's comfortably living in Boston, and suddenly she is surprised to inherit a house on Cape Cod. And her question is, can she actually leave the city and live on Cape Cod? And I think that's a question a lot of people have asked themselves as they come to Cape Cod. As we know, we have a huge population of off-capers who come and fall in love with Cape Cod and they stay forever. And she turns out to be one of those people.
Yes, yeah. And I must say the novel is a romance, a mystery, a call for environmental protection, and also it has a bit of magic realism in it. So it's something for everyone. So tell us something about this call, the environmental protection aspect of which is a critical issue on Cape Cod.
Yes, it absolutely is. And I didn't know how timely the environmental protection theme in the book would actually turn out to be. There's a new genre in literature called eco-fiction. And eco-fiction is a series of novels that highlight the environment and themes of protecting the environment and even recognizing the environment and our connection to it. So Wash Ashore fits into that theme. And I think the main character, Olive Adams, who you mentioned just before, when she falls in love with Cape Cod, she recognizes the value of the land on Cape Cod and the value of protecting what's left of the land because we've developed so much. And in the book, there's a piece of land right next to her house, which is threatened, and it becomes her mission to save it. So the book talks about land preservation on the Cape and how can we save it, what board can save it, what conversation can happen in the community. And in the book, the outcome, I don't want to give away too much, but it's about how Cape Codders can do their best to try to save what's left of the land and what the best outcomes might be.
Right. And you're right about it being timely because currently now we have this proposal to turn 170 acres of mature forest and the Joint Base Cape Cod into a machine gun range for the Army National Guard, and that's being under consideration. I think it's right now in being weighed and judged, and many environmentalists are quite worried about whether or not that will happen. So this notion of eco-fiction is very exciting. The role of fiction has always been to turn the abstract into something concrete, some felt issues, humane characters who respond to issues, making an environmental protection not abstract but very real. I'm so excited by that new genre.
Yes, I think it's a fascinating and timely and necessary genre. And if I think about it hard enough, I think we do so well to listen to our writers and to hear what they're saying. And it would be an incredible world if we could enact policy based on what some of our writers are saying, because I think the writer's job is observation. And in their observing, I think they're really seeing, in some cases, quite clearly what's happening.
Yes. Yeah. And then the narrator of a novel is able to get into the heads of the characters and as a sort of in direct discourse, so we get their feelings and their thoughts, and it just makes issues real to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too of your work as following, I think it was Henry James, the dictum, write what you know. And certainly you are writing about a Cape Cod that you know very well, right? You were a native of Cape Cod.
Yes, yes. I was born in Barnstable, and I did write a lot about what I know and what I cherish about Cape Cod. And I cherish the nature and the landscape. And the house in the book is based on a real house, a wonderful old house that hasn't changed in forever and ever. And it's sort of the Cape house that sort of just evolved. And some of these old houses have evolved over years and are fascinating testaments to time. So the house I know well, and I changed all the names and places, but it's definitely a landscape that I inhabit.
And your family has a long history in Barnstable.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And what's really striking too is your particular fondness of beech trees, silver beech tree. The Olive Adams's house is called Silver Beech. Mm-hmm. And I'm particularly struck with the way you evoke beautifully in your poetry as well the nature of the tree under nature's assault in a hurricane, whipped by the hurricane. And then also we'll get into its assault by humans as well, which is, of course, you touch upon. But I thought that was quite striking in one of your poems. Of course, I've always loved trees and see their beauty, but for the first time in reading one of your poems, I felt commanded to respect the tree. Do you remember? Would you tell us the name of that poet? There was
yes. That poem. I think you're talking about a poem in Moontide. My
yes, exactly.
And that poem is, I can find it. I've got the book. It's Old Cedar.
Right? Yes. I wonder if it would be so great if you could read it, just a passage of that.
I'd be delighted to. So, some of my greatest friends are trees, and Old Cedar is one of my trees. And I think generally trees make a wonderful metaphor for the way hopefully they don't break, they bend in a strong wind, and then they come back. And at their best, they can do that. And that's a great trait that we can emulate ourselves, I think. But here's Old Cedar from Moontide. Old Cedar knows why growing into the wind is certainly no solution. It tried once, and proof of the attempt lingers in the twisted gray trunk below a shock of green on branches curved by the forceful old south wind. Old Cedar stands, a lonely figure defying the wind, as relentless ocean water comes ever closer, slowly claiming it from below. So I wrote this poem, I guess maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And Old Cedar has been on the beach in Barnstable, and the water has come closer and closer to Old Cedar as the tides get higher and higher, which they're doing because I've observed it. It's happening. And now Old Cedar is gone altogether because it's been washed away in a storm. So that's now it's a memorial poem now.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's because the inevitability of sea rise. Yes. So yeah, your Moonrise has a lot of nostalgia in it, hasn't it?
Moontide, yes, it has. Do you want me to read anything else? That's my only tree poem.
There is the one I think that's quite memorable. The dog's view, being always in the present.
That's one of my favorite poems. Moontide was inspired by my black dog, my black lab called Daisy, and she and I would beach every day, and I'd get a poem almost every time I walked her. It was a gift. So I wrote about Daisy in a poem called Black Dog. Black dog spends hours staring into tide pools and explodes the briny minnow-verse, pouncing on the darting minnow shadows. The sun climbs the sky and inches down again. Black dog has no need of a watch. Black dog lives entirely in the moment now, running the beach with no thought of later and before, no what if, no regret, only black dog beach and sky, the eternal now, now, now.
We might learn from your black dog to be in the moment more
Yes.
often than we are.
Animals have a wonderful capacity to really inhabit the moment. And if you watch animals inhabit the moment, I find you can inhabit the moment with them.
Yes, yes, that's a very, very good thought. And so I want to wonder, because you spend much of your year in the Netherlands, and I'm wondering if you find similarities or stark differences in the landscape there, as opposed to your hometown.
I find very stark differences. The Dutch landscape has been manicured for centuries. They are experts at managing the landscape, and they're engineers. They've pulled back the water, they've built the land, and it's really manicured like a garden. So the comparison is, and it's much more densely populated too.
I see.
A lot of people, and Cape Cod, this part of America, I bet the rest of America too, but Cape Cod definitely seems like a wild landscape compared to the landscape.
Really? How interesting.
Yes, it's not manicured the same way. There's more, we still have more open space. We haven't built everything. And we've got more nature and wild animals that are unheard of in the Netherlands.
Oh, that's so interesting. They obviously must have their environmental concerns as well. And perhaps one of the reasons why it is so manicured is a defense against climate change, against nature, the encroaching nature.
They've always been fighting back the water. So that's connected to it. And they do a wonderful job having urban areas with nature preserves woven into them. So you'll have right outside of Amsterdam, these big urban areas, but they graze cattle there. And it's still, to me, it still looks manicured because it's not really wild and it's not full of wild animals and there's not as many bugs. And you come here and it's just nature everywhere, exploding.
Yeah. Yes, well, you've helped us. We should appreciate what we have for those of us who have not been to the Netherlands. I'm curious, I can't resist asking you this. Among your Dutch friends, how are we being seen from that perspective, from the Netherlands, American generally, with our particular current political climate? Any comments that you hear from your associates there?
I think they're wondering what is going on here. They ask me that. And at times they check in and ask me if I'm okay. And I think that I think Europe would like to have faith that America will remain its ally and remain in the same capacity it has been in since post-World War. And I don't know if Europe is convinced that we will remain in that capacity in our relations with Europe. So there's question about what's the US and the European relationship going to look like moving forward, because there's uncertainty there. And what will women's rights look like in America moving forward, and how can we be a modern nation and question those rights? And I get questions about that from people frequently.
Interesting. Yes, yeah. And that uncertainty certainly is part of the mood that all of us have in this country too, where perhaps is uncertain about what the future is going to bring us, as well as your associates in the Netherlands. But to get back to your writing, I'm our viewers may be curious about this thing called the writing life. What is yours like? And can you tell us something about how you write, when you write, and the more, perhaps if you have some plans for some other subjects that you find intriguing?
I write when the spigot opens, when the writing comes to me. And there are periods when that's very active and periods when it isn't. So right now I'm not actually actively writing, but I'm actively publishing other writers through my press, Seacrow Press. But when I am writing, when I wrote Wash Ashore, the story just appeared during the second lockdown, and we were stuck at home because we couldn't go out, and I had time, so I could let it appear. And then the characters took over the story, and I'd get up in the morning and sit at my typewriter, and the characters would literally tell me what was going to happen next. It would just come out, and it was really a lot of fun to find out what they do. So I think I have a relationship with the characters, and they almost guide the process. It's
yes. That's it. That's so interesting. As I think about the narrative, I can see that, well, there are some surprises in the narration, some twists and turns. And so you hadn't planned those.
I had a loose idea of what would happen, but a lot of the time, yeah, I was surprised too. That, oh, there's going to be a motorcycle crash today. Okay.
Oh.
Right there. And I didn't plan that. It appeared.
That's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
So, have you been? Do you have any other novels, or are you thinking more about more poetry?
I think I might do a sequel to Wash Ashore, and I think it might be about the character Johnny Gilmore in the story. And Johnny Gilmore is a character everybody seems to want to hang around with because he's a lot of fun. So I have an idea for that, and I have another idea for a prequel to the book that would be maybe called Mooncussers, and it may be about prohibition and something happening in the past.
Yes, yes.
I haven't settled on anything yet.
I think you've got a good thought about Johnny. I at first thought that he was going to be a love interest, but he is an interesting character, and one drawn to Cape Cod and Cape Cod artifacts and sort of. So I would think that that's a rich vein for you to mine. Good idea. I want to then talk again about Cape Cod and this environmental crisis. It gets kind of complicated because we need to preserve the environment, but we also have the need to develop so that we have a strong economy. And then there's this critical need for housing. So we have lots of careful thinking that we need to think to include as we make plans for the future. So it's really important. I'm very happy that we have the assistance of associations like the Association to Preserve Cape Cod and other environmentalists, the 350 organization. So I don't know if you're connected with any of those groups.
I used to be on the board for Old Kings Highway in Barnstable, and that preserves the north side. Each village has a historic preservation, and I loosely based an agency in my book on Old Kings Highway. As a society, and the mission of the society is to preserve the historical integrity of the landscape and the houses, which is why Route 6A, the Old Kings Highway, is still so historic and beautiful. So there are a lot of groups dedicated to trying to preserve Cape Cod's history, and they're all very valuable. And Old Kings Highway has done a wonderful job on the north side, keeping it beautiful and historically accurate. So I take my hat off to all those groups.
Yes, yes, yes. We have. You're right. We have similar groups in each of our villages, which is really important, right? And you established Sea Crow, that's SEA Crow Press yourself. That's something that is you have developed that
Yes.
press. And tell us something about the sorts of manuscripts that would be welcomed by our viewers, any of our viewers who are would-be writers.
Well, Sea Crow Press publishes poetry and literary fiction and nonfiction. And we just published a young adult novel as well. So that's the new genre we're doing. I'm looking for manuscripts from all of those genres, book length. And we're online at seacrowpress.com, and our submissions specifications are there. You can find them easily on our website. And we're absolutely open to new writers and emerging voices from anybody. And our mission is to amplify voices. I think the more small press work we can have, the more voices we can have. And I think it's really important to be inclusive, to raise more voices, which is my whole goal through the press.
Yes, that's so important, because publishing today is, speaking about crises, we have major kind of monopoly, if I'm not being exaggerating, in publishing, which makes it very hard for a writer who would like to be published. Can you, so is that part of your motivation in developing, in founding a small press?
Yes, I suspect that a lot of valuable work is being lost because there's just a bottleneck, or it's impossible to get published. It's very difficult. So that's what the role of the small press really is. I think to give writers a way to get their work out, to be published, to have a chance. Yes.
Self-publishing has got its own limitations, I think, in the sense that we don't have heavy editing that is always helpful to a writer. Do you have editors who work to help writers with their manuscripts?
I do. Over the last 2 years, I've put together a really great team. I've got 2 editors and I've got a cover designer. And between us, we can cover the bases to produce a pretty good industry standard book, which will be a book bookstores can actually put on their shelves. Because that's a challenge, to get all the specs just right.
Yes, I don't know if readers who are not necessarily interested in the writing process are aware of how critical it is to have a good editor to help put together a novel, or even maybe less so in poetry. I'm not sure about that. Our poets are also helped by editing.
Yes, they certainly are. But I have found that most of the poetry manuscripts that I've accepted have been really carefully curated by the writers ahead of time. And it's fiction and the nonfiction that requires more editing. And certainly without my editors, I wouldn't even have a press. They're crucial to the process. They really are important.
Right. I wonder if we want to put your website, perhaps our director can get the name of your website on screen, so viewers will be able to go to that website. And so give us the name of the Sea Crow Press's website.
It's seacrowpress.com.
Ah, very simple. That's good. And do you have a separate website for your own writing?
Yes, marypetiet.com is where my writing.
All right, very good and very easy. Now, to get back to Wash Ashore, when was that published? Just last year, I believe.
That published in June, this spring.
Oh, so it's brand new, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm thinking about the names that you've chosen, particularly your cat. Yes, there's a character in an important character the cat, and the name is
Rasputin.
right. Yes. So why?
Well, actually, that was something my editor suggested. That's how important editors are.
Really?
Cats have many lives. They have 9 lives. And Rasputin, if you read about Rasputin, who was, I guess he was a threat to the Russian throne before the revolution in Russia. And the nobility decided to kill him because he was threatening the throne. And they thought they'd poison him. And they fed him enough poison to fell an ox and he didn't die. And then they shot him and he didn't die. And then they chased him through the back garden in the snow and he didn't die. And he fell into the river Neva. And when his body was retrieved, it was found that he had died by drowning after all of that. So Rasputin had many, many lives in a sense. And the cat has many, many lives. And it was just a fun name. So we called the cat Rasputin.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes, yes, certainly a great link to the original historical character, and Rasputin Rasputin must have been very charismatic as well, I think.
Yes.
Yes, and your cat certainly has a mind of its own in this book.
Well, most cats do. Have you ever looked at a cat and thought, what is that cat staring at? Cats stare. And so that's what I was wondering. And this cat stares, but he's definitely seeing something.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Yes, that's intriguing. I'm sure that readers will find that really enjoyable. And so now we perhaps you would want to make some comments about what you're seeing now. Are you seeing any changes in Barnstable Village that, having been away a while, strike you as being positive or perhaps negative?
Well, the outline of the village is the same, and I'm finding the people are all still there, which is really nice to come home and see everybody.
Good.
And the Dolphin restaurant is unchanged. And there's a special chowder recipe in Wash Ashore that the Dolphin restaurant was special and kind enough to give us for the book. So in the book, you get a chowder recipe, and that's unchanged. But we do have big new street lights at the intersection of 6A and Hyannis Road. And we have new speed bumps, which are massive. You have to go over them slowly to keep traffic from speeding through the village, because now we have so much traffic, I suppose.
Yes.
Otherwise, I think it looks pretty much the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned the chowder recipe. I have followed that, and one of my favorites, but I won't mention it. No, because I know that your character is hard put to find the right spice to just make this perfect chowder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I won't mention, but I had never thought that would be something that would make a chowder really good. So that's another great attraction in your book, is having that recipe. And yeah, that is some serious chef that you have in the portrayal of that particular character. And so, yes, I'm encouraging people to. Your book is available on in bookstores local.
It's available wherever good books are sold. So you can find it online. It's locally available at Parnassus Book Service in Yarmouthport and Titcomb's Bookshop in Sandwich. You can find it at Scout Vintage, which is a beautiful shop in Dennis on 6A near the Playhouse behind Finn Restaurant. And other than that, you can order it from any bookstore. They have access to it online.
Yes, and Thelma's viewers may want to check a Cousins. If they don't have it on the shelves, they'll be happy to order it, I'm sure. A Cousins is very enthusiastic about carrying books by local writers. So I don't think of you as necessarily, or maybe you don't want to think of yourself as a regional Cape Cod writer. Perhaps being in the Netherlands as part of the year has inspired you to write something about that country as well?
I don't know what I'll write about the Netherlands yet. It hasn't come to me, but I do know that the press we're releasing two books, one in October and one in November, and they're worldly books. The first book is called Pantala Parade, and it's nonfiction, and it's memoir, it's personal stories. It's similar to Humans of New York. It's personal stories about people assimilating into America, into our country, and about the experience of that. And it really highlights the differences amongst the people here that make us great. And it's a fascinating firsthand account collection. And the second book we're doing in November is called Thirst. And it's a page turner novel. And it reminds me of The Sheltering Sky as a desert epic. And it's about a woman disappointed in love who goes to the desert to heal. And she goes as a teacher to teach nomadic groups English. And it really talks about her healing process, her experience fitting in there, and what happens to these desert tribes who find that their tribal territory has been changed by recently imposed new national lines, which have left them refugees wherever they go. And how do the governments deal with them, and can they survive that? So it's a fascinating story that it happens in East Africa, Northeast Africa, in the desert. So we're definitely publishing things that are much more worldly, but we're also, I'm tight and close to my New England roots as well, because I think we have such a great literary tradition right here that we can really tap into at the same time.
That's so important. I didn't realize that Sea Crow Press was not, I had a notion that it was interested in writing about Cape Cod, but it's very broad, and those books sound very important and very interesting. I wonder, of course, they'll be listed on the Sea Crow Press website. Are they? For the very good. Yes, I can't wait to check that out and perhaps read them, particularly the book about immigrant stories.
Pantala Parade, yes. Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's written by a Canadian journalist who's fascinating. She's also right now, she's putting together a compilation of stories from Ukraine, and we're planning to publish that compilation late winter, early spring. And we want it to somehow have a hopeful tone to it, and it's about people and what they're experiencing now in the Ukrainian situation. So that's going to be our third book that is coming soon with a much broader appeal, I think.
Well, that I'm excited to hear that, and I can't wait to see those titles and to get the books and read them. They are writing about serious, important issues that face all of us today. I can't thank you enough for coming onto the program and talking about both your work, your new book, Wash Ashore, and your poetry, and about the work that Sea Crow Press is doing. So I thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you again next time on Conversations with Barbara.